Maryland. Good to hear from him today. Billy, good afternoon. How are you, pal? What do you have for me? Let me hear. Bill.
I'm good. I'm good, Chris. Thank you. I wanted to call and just tell you, I heard the first 2 episodes of the podcast, and I thought they were terrific. I loved college basketball back then. I'm really looking forward to hearing the UCLA one, but you did a good job. But you, especially for the younger people who listen to it, you did miss one little detail that I think people would have liked to have known. When you went through those Ohio State teams and all the big names on those great Ohio State teams with Lucas, you didn't mention the guy on that team who is arguably the biggest name in college basketball of any of them.
Bobby Knight.
Bobby Knight.
Lucas did. Lucas did in his cut, I believe. I probably didn't. I think Lucas may have mentioned Knight in a cut. I'd have to go back and listen to that again. But you're right. That is an omission. We should have made sure people knew that that Knight was on those teams. I don't think he started. He was, the 7th man?
No. He didn't play. He didn't play much at all.
I believe Lucas mentioned it, but you might be right. We may have missed that. That might be a fair point. I'd have to go back and listen to it myself. You're right. I probably didn't mention it. Maybe it's because I thought that Lucas did and we used a lot of his sound, but maybe I'm wrong about that. That's a good point. Okay, good job. What else today?
The other thing, before I turn to the NCAA and the Big Ten, that's just an interesting fun fact. Most people probably don't realize that Willie Worsley was Spud Webb. Spud Webb before Spud, or Muggsy Bogues before Muggsy Bogues.
Oh, I didn't realize that. He was that small. He was tiny. Yeah, I didn't know he was that small. Wow. That was a shock that he played big-time college basketball. Okay, go ahead.
And then in 2 years, he would go on to be a teammate of Nate Tiny Archibald. Getting to the NCAA tournament, I'm just, to me, it's such a contrast, especially, I don't know about for you, focusing on what I think was the golden era of that sport. And it was a great sport once, and I don't think it is now. But talking about the Big Ten, trash them, love them, hate them. The real problem with this event is no conference. I don't care if you have the 8 or 9 best teams in the country. When you're playing a single elimination tournament, if your regular season can't weed out number 8, what's the point of doing this? So, it's just, I don't know. It just bothers me. And focusing on what I like is I'm sort of a stereotypical old timer when it comes to college basketball because it used to be a great sport. 8 teams barely get you into the NBA playoffs. It shouldn't get you into the NCAA.
I've said that 1,000 times. You shouldn't be able to finish 9th in a conference and get a bid. I completely agree with you on that. And another rule they should have is you shouldn't be able to finish under 500 in a conference and also get in. And I'm sure there's 2 or 3 teams that are in this tournament based on that too. They're never going to change that, but I think you are 1,000% correct. There should be a cap on certain teams from certain conferences. It would make the regular season much more significant, number one, and it would weed out a lot of these. Now, listen, I'm sure you're going to come up with a lot of teams who, finished, middle of the pack of their conference who ended up in a Final Four. So I understand it goes the other way, like Oregon State's a perfect example. I mean, Oregon State, if you look at Oregon State, Bill, I'll take a look at it right now. I bet you Oregon State in that league. Now, again, it's a weird league. Based on the idea that, they didn't play, their schedule was crazy. But Oregon State this year, in their league, obviously they were 19-12, but in their conference, they were 10-10 in their conference. Now, you can make an argument they shouldn't have been in the NCAA tournament at 10-10. But they made it, and they won their conference tournament, though. It's a little unfair for them. Give me another team. You want to give me a team out of the Big Ten? Let's look at the Big Ten standings for a second, and let's see if I can find a team, Bill, for you that, really should not be in this NCAA tournament based on their – all right, Michigan State was 9-11, shouldn't have made it. Maryland was 9-11, shouldn't have made it. That's 2 you can weed out right out of the gate. Wisconsin and Rutgers were 10-10. So you're right. I am not a big believer. And now Maryland won a game, so people are going to say, well, hold on now. Why are you getting Maryland out? They won a game in the NCAA tournament against the Connecticut team that had a good record. So I do understand both arguments. But I think it would make a lot more juice, give you the regular season a lot more juice if, in fact, they cap the amount of teams in a conference allowed into the NCAA tournament. So I'm with you on that. Go ahead. What else today?
Yeah, nothing other than that was really it. I'm really looking forward, especially to the UCLA podcast.
It's an hour and 12 minutes, Bill. Good call. There's no way you can't enjoy it. I think it's an hour and 12 minutes. Is it, Eddie? Didn't you tell me it was an hour and 12 minutes? I think that's what it was, the UCLA one. So it's long. But, hey, you want to know about UCLA basketball, you're going to learn. I promise you. And that's a good point about Knight. I'd have to go back and listen to that myself. Doug in San Francisco. He's on Mad Dog Unleashed. Doug, good afternoon. How are you today, pal? What do you have? Doug.
I'm doing great, Doggy. Two quick things. First one is, and I can't believe you're not more upset, 2.5-hour windows for 40 minutes of basketball. There's a 5-minute commercial break with the same 10 commercials every 3 minutes. It's impossible to watch the game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm used to it. Those media timeouts at every 4 minutes is a disaster. They're way too long. I'm with you 1,000%. And then if somebody calls a timeout in between the 4-minute breaks, that's another 4 minutes of commercial breaks. Way too much commercial. They got to pay for it. They spent $800 million on the rights. They're going to get their money back. And they have everything sold out from what I read from Sean McManus. So as a result, we're going to live with it. But you are 1,000% correct. Good point. Go ahead.
If you are a college president paying a coach $2 to $4 million a year, and they're getting their butt kicked by these coaches who are making $400,000 a year, and you have better players, they need to reevaluate what a good coach is.
Well, I mean, I think the perfect example would be this Mosier kid out of a good call out of Loyola, and good call there, Doug. I mean, Mosier, this guy is he's a tremendous coach. I mean, he is as good a coach as you ever can see. He is a wonderful, wonderful basketball coach. And I don't know what happened at the two other places that he was at, whether they be Illinois State and Arkansas Little Rock, but boy, he can coach my team. He ran circles around Brad Underwood yesterday. Ran circles. And he's not making a fortune like some of these other guys are. And he doesn't have the players these other guys have. But look at his runs in these last 2 years. Andy in Seattle. A chance for him. Andy, good afternoon. How are you today, pal? What do you have? Andy.
I'm good. Yeah, 3 points on the tournament. Friday felt like a Thursday, just how my brain is patterned. You know how, like, doesn't matter what day of the week Christmas is, the feeling of the holiday overtakes the day of the week. With the tournament, that first day just always makes you feel like a Thursday. But we got used to it. And to use a phrase that you like to use, with that Oregon State-Tennessee game, that Oregon State coach, Tinkle, he can squeeze blood out of a stone, gets the most out of the least, and against your favorite guy that you like to rag on, Barnes gets the least out of the most. So in hindsight, Oregon State can do a lot more with talent without their talent than Tennessee can do with their talent, if that makes sense. Just because
it makes sense. We talked to Wenzel about that a little later on today. It definitely makes some sense. It's a very fair point. I don't know that much about the Oregon State team. That's another team I haven't watched that much yet. I only watched them. Let's see. They played their first game, Tennessee. They were winning throughout. And last night, it was the last game of the night. So I was out of there by 10:30, 11 o'clock. So I stayed away. But I think that is a very, very fair point. Very, very, very fair point, Andy. He's done a hell of a job. And that Oregon State team right now, I mean, listen, they're going to have a hard game against Loyola. That's a very, boy, who would have predicted Loyola and Oregon State in a regional semi? Nobody would have predicted that before this tournament began. Go ahead. What else on your mind today? Let me hear.
Yeah, it's a wacky region right now. And, if Rutgers made it through, it'd be even a little more wackier, that whole bracket area. But the other thing is I kind of just want to, it's an easy target, Big Ten. But, the Illinois, they're going to regret this. So that team was made for Final Four. With all these other teams down, this is Illinois' chance. And they looked like they rolled out of bed, and they thought they could just win by rolling out of bed and turning the switch on. And the thing about this tournament, maybe more than any other sporting event, just because of all the variables, these are kids. They're 19, 20, 21 years old. All it takes is one stretch of lackadaisical play, and they get tight. But in this case, Illinois didn't even seem like they got tight. They just seemed they were disinterested. They kind of remind me of the SEC football school that doesn't want to play in their bowl game because they're not playing for the national championship.
It's a good comparison. Illinois, and good call, Andy. Illinois just was, I mean, they were completely out of it from the opening tip. A very, very poor performance. Now, you want to excuse it because they had such a good finish to the regular year and won their conference tournament. That's what defenders will do of the Big Ten. And I understand it's like 3 different seasons: the regular season, the conference tournament season, and the NCAA tournament season. The idea of your head coach of a coaching staff is get your team to peak at the most important tournament. Everything else is nobody cares about. Nobody in America cares that Illinois beat Ohio State in overtime to win the conference tournament last Sunday, because all they care about now is both were embarrassed early in the NCAA tournament 5 days after that game. We'll take a timeout. We continue. We're Mad Dog Unleashed.